He just spoke with the foundation CEO. Here's an excerpt.
And partnership with media is very critical to create a culture shift and to break the stigma of infertility and infertile women, as this is the main objective of menopause and mother. We would like to raise awareness about prevention, knowing that 85% of infertility cases can be prevented because it's due to untreated infectious diseases, which is resulted from genital mutation, child marriage, unsafe abortion, unsafe delivery. So this message is very important to be taken through media, through all the media houses and journalists with us today. And also raising awareness about male infertility, knowing that 50% of the causes of infertility is due to male factors. So men and women equally responsible for infertility. And that's why we launched also the hashtag #MenToo, so everyone can spread the word around. So I urge all the media journalists to join us and join the campaign and raise awareness about infertility and empower men.
That's Rasa Kilich speaking there to our Fatou Sane Sise on the latest effort to highlight the work of broadcasters putting attention on the plight of infertile women. Now moving on, the Vice President and Minister for Women's Affairs, Honorable Usainu Dabo, on Tuesday highlighted government's commitment in ensuring universal access to reproductive health and family planning services. Dabo described this as one of the fastest ways to speed up the country's efforts to mitigate poverty, as well as attain both national and global sustainable development goals. He made these remarks ahead of commemorations marking the 2018 World Population Day with the theme, Family Planning is a Human Right. Here's an excerpt.
The theme for this year's celebration is, quote unquote, family planning is a human right. World Population Day 2018 commemorates the landmark agreement made during the International Conference on Human Rights held in Tehran in 1968, which for the first time globally affirmed family planning as a human right, and further affirmed that parents have a basic human right to determine freely and responsibly the number and spacing of their children. In the Gambia, the right to decide the timing, spacing, and number of children is mostly dictated by men. Women are most often seen as subjects whose sole responsibility in the family is to bear children and perform household.
On population issues, the National Population Commission Secretariat, in collaboration with partners, will tomorrow join the rest of the world to observe World Population Day. The event, as CC Someone reports, will take place at the Youth Monuments at Westville.
July 11th is celebrated globally as World Population Day, and the theme for this year's celebration is Family Planning is a Human Right. Organizers say the commemoration will serve as an awareness campaign for families to freely and responsibly determine the number and spacing of their children, emphasizing the need for more awareness to manage the population. The Director of Population Affairs, Sekou J.K. Trawale, said maternal health issues are on the rise.
Gambia is one of those countries where the CPR is very low. And we have seen in many countries where has one of the worst demographic indicators. When it comes to maternal deaths, we have about 433 per 100,000 live births, which is very much on the high side. It's unprecedented and unacceptable.
UNFPA's country representative, Kulile Adinei, said his office is fully committed to supporting national efforts to uphold the rights of individuals, especially women, to effectively plan a family. He, however, called on governments to fulfill their commitments to ensure universal access to sexual and reproductive health care and rights.
Tell you that family planning is directly linked to maternal health, and that's why, and in Gambia, to bring it home, a lot of women die while giving birth. I don't want to go scientific. One of the major reasons of maternal death is anemia, which is loss of blood, and we know that these are very important things. Now, as women continue to explore and to determine the number of children they have, we have also noticed that in different parts of the world there's been improvement and different changes, but at different levels.
Jean-Jacques Jaji-Kuyari outlined that family planning is a global concern in which ICDP recommends for an increase in universal access.
28% of the users of family planning, according to the study, that demographic study, 28% of them discontinue their family planning method after 1 month of usage. And out of that 28%, 5% of them, it is only 5% that switch to another method. So what happens to the other 21%?
Tomorrow's event will target government institutions, UN agencies, religious leaders, partners, and a cross-section of the community to discuss pertinent issues on family planning. For the news, I am Sisi Sawane.
The National Population Secretariat getting ready for eventful celebrations of World Population Day. Now, the new ambassador of the state of Qatar to the Gambia, His Excellency Faisal Fahad Al-Mani, Tuesday, July 10th, presented a copy of his letter of credence to the Minister of Foreign Affairs, International Cooperation and Gambians Abroad, Dr. Momodu Tangara in Banjul. Ambassador Al-Mani replaces former Ambassador Mohammed Nasser Al-Ghadi, whose tour of duty ended in June 2018. In his maiden bilateral engagement since assuming office, Dr. Tangara expressed optimism that Ambassador Al-Mani's term will boost the already deep bilateral cooperation between the Gambia and the state of Qatar. Ambassador Al-Mani looks forward to finally presenting his letter of credence to His Excellency President Adama Barrow in a separate engagement. The Ambassador of the People's Republic of China, His Excellency Zhang Jiming, also paid a courtesy call on Minister Tangara and congratulated him for his appointment as Minister of Foreign Affairs. Now, moving on, proceedings at the Janneh Commission investigating ex-President Janneh and his close associates continue on Tuesday with the cross-examination of senior Gantel officials. The testimonies are in relation to the multimedia gateway project. Aisha Jara tells us more.
Cross-examination of these officials from the Gambia Telecommunication Company, Gamtel, by Malik Fafambai, who is the counsel representing Balajase, the Chief Executive Officer of Multimedia Gateway Incorporation, and Mobicel Blue Ocean Wireless Company Limited, a telecommunication engineering company. They were contracted and did some work at the State House for ex-President Jammeh.
Mr. Suso, you mentioned in your evidence that Balajase is very active. These are your words. Balajase is very active and acts in representing MGI a lot. Did you say that in your evidence?
In my evidence?
Yes, sir.
I cannot remember that.
You have not shown any evidence to show that Mr. Balajase, Mobicel Blue Ocean Wireless Company Limited, and Multimedia Gateway Incorporation protected the interest of MGI Switzerland. That's what I'm asking you.
Responding to questions by Counsel Mbai during the cross-examination, Mr. Suso had this to say.
According to my evidence, there is nothing where I mentioned that Balajase, protects the interest of any company in this country. I did not say anything like that in any of my testimonies.
Meanwhile, the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Energy, Lamin Kamara, was also at the commission to answer questions from Counsel Mbai.
Mr. Kamara, you mentioned that for a mobile virtual network operation line in the Gambia. When was that application made, sir?
I'm not able to remember the exact year, but that was around 2013, maybe around 2013.
Did you read the letter personally? That's what I asked.
I read the letter. He made an application for telecommunication services, and the application was handled by Bureau, and it was then referred to the ministry with a recommendation, which the ministry agreed to Bureau's recommendation, and it was denied.
Equally cross-examined on the same issue by Counsel Mbai, where Alhaji Abdullah Kebe and Sajoka, both from Gamtel. Sittings at the Commission of Inquiry continued on Wednesday as witnesses continue to give testimonies on the financial dealings of former President Jammeh. Aissatou Jata, GRTS.
Now moving on, the management and staff of the Gambia Radio and Television Services have received news of the appointment of a new Director General in the person of Abdul M.K. Toure. Prior to his appointment, Mr. Toure was the Deputy Director for Programs. GRTS's Fatou Janimbai reports that staff have expressed willingness to support and work with their new DG.
The downfall of a man is not always the end of his life. The old adage is true, as Abdul Toure, who once lost his job as Deputy Director General of the Gambia Radio and Television Services GRTS, is now the new Director General. He was reinstated just nearly a year ago as the Deputy Director General TV Programs. News of his elevation has brought smiles on many faces at the national broadcaster.
I feel very elated and humbled, and I want to thank the Allah Almighty for the gift of life and for this precious day in my life, and also to thank the President, His Excellency Adama Barrow, the gift of life and repose in me. It's a big challenge to head an institution like GRTS.
DG Toure has served GRTS for over 2 decades and contributed in helping to move the institution forward.
Well, there are a lot of challenges ahead, as you rightly know. We have a strategic plan in place that we have just developed. So I want to see that that strategic plan is implemented. It will be validated very soon through the help of our board of directors. We will be able to implement that strategic plan, which has a focus on how GRTS is going to move from now on.
Mr. Toure's new appointment received an overwhelming reaction from his members of staff.
Abdul can do the job, and we, as the other staff or senior management, are fully behind him.
He deserves to have this with all that he has gone through. And then from where Mr. Ibrahim Sira stopped, we were all praying to have somebody who will just follow suit what he was doing for us. And thank God for bringing Abdul in.
I've known Abdul Toure for a while. He's somebody who is straightforward, who is focused, and who listens a lot. He's a team player, and that is very important in broadcasting. So hopefully, everything will be okay. He has a great team behind him. Expectations are high.
He knows what we do here. He knows everything. He is somebody that monitors GRTS on a daily basis. There is nothing that escapes him when it comes to what is aired on TV and what people face.
It's a well-deserved promotion for Mr. Abdul Toure. He is a man of the television. In that, the television is the only place he has worked for during his life.
Abdul will now have to consolidate the gains of the former Director General and make sure that he gets GRTS to another level.
And as Mr. Toure assumes the leadership of the national broadcaster, a job he only knew, he is soliciting 2 types of support: 1, human, and 2, divine. Reporting for GRTS News, I am Fatou Janimbai.
A big congratulations to the new Director General of the national broadcaster. Now, the Gambia Tourism and Hospitality Institute and Senegal's École Nationale de Formation Hôtelier et Touristique entered into an agreement. The partnership is geared towards improving cooperation between the 2 institutions. Modou Bajan tells us more.
This year, there was a presidential council meeting between the 2 countries, during which a series of bilateral agreements were signed, which included the tourism and hospitality and culture sector.
Authenticating a memorandum of understanding between Gambia Tourism and Hospitality Institute, GTHI, and Senegal's École Nationale de Formation Hôtelier et Touristique. This unfolds barely 4 months after the last Senegambia Presidential Council meeting. GTHI Director General Dauda Nyang described the intervention as crucial, explaining that it will keenly boost academic and service excellence alongside agro-tourism, which largely looms in the industry.
We all aiming for academic excellence. We all aiming for service excellence. We also clear about the fact that we want to improve the linkages between tourism and agriculture in our respective countries. As academic institutions, we should be doing joint research between our 2 countries, involving our staff, our students, to have outcomes that will change lives in our respective countries.
Emphasizing the vitality of the Union, The director, École Nationale de Formation Hôtelier et Touristique, Moussa Chor, cited the exchange of good practices and students as key aims of the memo. Chor also mentioned the harmonization of policies to better tourism and hospitality in the region.
This memorandum of understanding will allow our two institutions to exchange in terms of good practices and experiences in the fields of tourism and hospitality. What we're aiming at is to allow the GTHI to receive Senegalese students here in the Gambia and to allow the Gambian students also to come to Senegal in order to know how we're training our students and to give them also the opportunities to frequent our hotels and enterprises in sectors of tourism and hospitality.
The Permanent Secretary, Minister of Tourism and Culture, Kodu Jaban, hopes that the partnership will enhance continuous development cooperation between the two countries.
We are very much in a position to register our commitment as a sector to continue to progress and work hand in hand with our counterparts in Senegal to ensure that the conclusions of the Presidential Council meeting that was held sometime early this year will be achieved as planned.
For a sector which is a key employer and GDP contributor to the Gambian economy in particular, the engagement is deemed timely and handy in augmenting the Gambia's challenge tourism and hospitality glory. Modu Bajan, GRTS.
Personnel of the Gambia Radio and Television Services recently benefited from a week-long training on news and program production, presentation, graphic design, and video editing, among other relevant media fields. Organized by the Turkish Radio and Television Services, the engagement is set to enhance the capacities of journalists who are at the helm of information dissemination in the public broadcaster. Umijaya tells us more.
Held at the Turkish Radio and Television Services in Ankara, the week-long training was not only limited to the theoretical aspect of news production and editing, but went the extra mile to explore practical media initiatives. Participants engaged in different mediums collectively applied practical media activities focused on learning new digital skills shaping the virtual world. The exercise took trainees through diverse facets of news production, which paved the way for open discussions with trainers. Here, trainees were able to refresh their memories and learn new avenues in news production in line with international standards. Facilitated by TICA and TRT, the program also provides a unique networking opportunity for these young media professionals. The Gambian ambassador to Turkey expressed sincere gratitude to TICA and TRT for the training opportunity provided to Gambian journalists.
We are thankful to the Turkish government and the directorate of the TRT and TICA for providing this capacity building for 9 personnel of the radio and television of the Gambia, GRTS. And I also hope and pray that this will be an ongoing sort of exercise. You are the first people to benefit from this training, but I hope you will not be the last.
Trainees were taken on a conducted tour of the TRT newsrooms, control rooms, studios, and other locations. Here, trainees shared their impressions as regard what they saw and learned during the course.
This was a perfect opportunity for us to sharpen our skills, and my hope, of course, is that many of these trainings will happen, and then more and more of our colleagues will get the capacity that we need, so that we will, as GRTS, we can explore, because for us the sky is the limit as the national broadcaster.
The intensive program was not just limited to the training hall. Participants also visited and experienced some historic and exciting sites in Ankara. Memories that will stay in the mind and hearts without a break. But how important is a training course like this for young media professionals looking to make impact in journalism?
I learned 3 fundamentals: the short, precise, and straightforward. That in report writing, these things are very, very fundamental. You just have your script need to be very short sentences, simple language. You need to go straight to the point.
The training is expected to enhance capacities of journalists in various aspects of their daily routine, allowing them to apply newly acquired skills to ensure quality in their work. Turkey and the Gambia's relationship could be dated decades back. The partnership has continued to grow strong on both ends, with this exchange program intended to immensely add up to already existing ties between the two countries. Ominjai, GRTS.
Indeed. Now, officials of the National Agricultural Research Institute, IMF, and the African Development Bank, among others, are formulating the rice value chain for the Gambia Food Security and Job Creation Scheme. The initiative is one big step in the country's drive towards food security and poverty eradication. Lemendi reports.
Previous findings reveal that each Gambian consumes 117 kilograms of rice per annum, which is far above the world record of 56.9 kilograms. Yet the country imports over 80% of the rice it consumes. Officials say if nothing is done to reverse the situation, the country's march for food self-sufficiency will never be realized. The ambitious step taken to beat the challenge began with this workshop organized by NARI. The Research Institute has earned the financial support of the African and Islamic development banks to formulate the rice value chain for the Gambia for food security and job creation.
This time around, I think for New Gambia, we have to get it right. So we have to do something different. We can't just do the same rice projects and after 3 years you come back and then the infrastructure is dilapidated, the farmers have gone back to their traditional varieties. So we have to learn the lessons from the past. What didn't work? Why were some of these projects failing? And how are we going to make sure that what we do here is different from what has been done in the past?
In 2017 alone, the Gambia spent $74 million on rice importation, only $6 million short of the tourism total earnings for the year, as the second major contributor to the GDP. Officials said this is a cause for concern, hence the formulation of the rice value chain project.
While we consume that much rice, our national rice production is just about 17% of our needs, leaving us to import more than 80%, as rightly said by Ken John, of our rice needs. This, I am assured, you will all agree that it is not tenable, especially with the new Gambia, that put people in the center of its development efforts.
The objective of the program is to develop effective and profit-oriented national regional rice value chain enterprises with strong private sector participation.
It is for this reason that the Islamic and the African development banks are pioneering productivity-enhancing technologies through technologies for African agricultural transformation, which the Gambia is a part of.
Data shows that demand for rice in the continent is growing at an average rate of 6% annually. This is due to the low investment, both private and public, lack of technology, and poor and underdeveloped value chains. Majority of IDB member countries in sub-Saharan Africa have set themselves the goal of increasing domestic rice production so that they can avoid being dependent on imports.
The two-day forum is expected to discuss an array of issues on rice production, including seeds, irrigation, topography, fertilizer, transportation, policies, the role of the private sector, as well as the involvement of women and youth in agriculture for food self-sufficiency and employment creation. Louis Mendy, GRTS.
Now, the Network Against Gender-Based Violence has partnered with the Amplify Change and Action Aid the Gambia to implement a 2-year project aimed at strengthening civil society organizations to advance advocacy against gender-based violence. As part of the project activities, health and social workers are being trained on clinical and psychosocial guidelines for the management of gender-based violence. Father Eleka Molusia has the details.
The 4-day training on
clinical and psychosocial guidelines for health and social workers at the Nana Conference Hall is staged by the Network Against Gender-Based Violence. It comes amid by gender activists to increase national awareness on the many forms of violence faced by women, particularly in the domestic scene and workplace. Dr. Patrick Idoko of the Edward Francis Small Teaching Hospital emphasized the need to increasingly raise awareness on the effects of gender-based violence as a practice that hinders the development of women and girls.
The Gambian government over the years have enacted several laws to protect the most vulnerable in our society, who are usually the victims of gender-based violence. We have the Children's Act of 2005, the Women's Act of 2010, the Sexual Offences Act of 2013. So all these laws are there. But then, when a problem is a societal problem, establishing or creating laws is just the first step. It will not on its own take away the problem. And that is where I want to commend the role that the Network Against Gender-Based Violence has played over the years in highlighting or bringing a lot of focused attention to the issue of gender-based violence.
In order to eliminate all harmful practices against women and girls, there is a need to report cases of abuse and violence. For ardent gender activist, Madam Fantejata, the urgency to break existing barriers that
the evidences are loose and, the victim does not get justice.
The important seminar is more than an awareness-raising scheme. Local gender and rights activists use such occasions to network and harness individual forces to eliminate gender-based violence. The Deputy Committee Chairperson of NGBV reiterated efforts to synergize and help survivors of gender-based violence who are being especially encouraged to make effective use of the one-stop center.
I hope we will discuss both formally and informally as different sectors to work together, even more closely together, to make sure that the survivors of gender-based violence get the required assistance that they need, and also to increase that trust and understanding between us and the people that we provide support to.
By the end of the program, participants are expected to adopt best practices and harmonize advocacy approaches to effectively stop gender-based violence in the country. For Grts News, I am Fatili Kamuloshi.
Gambian author Hadim Jah has launched his maiden book, The Fall of Babili Mansa, Africa Endangered by Dictatorship, at the Alliance Francaise. Jah's new publication explores the social disconnect that has separated most African leaders from the people they serve. Sergio tells us more.
Hadim Jah's new book examines the outlook of the former regime, The Fall of Babili Mansa, Africa Endangered by Dictatorships. It's a spellbinding narrative that introduces the writer into the wealth of literary inspirations, attempting to make sense of the two most difficult decades of the Gambia's past. Hadim, who spent all his childhood and more than half of his life in Senegal, wrote the book in French. The work is also translated into English to help portray the fall of Yahya Jammeh's regime of oppression and the danger of the dictatorships to the African continent. The book takes on a documentary format with the author exploring an experimental style that intensifies visual appeal. A historical piece that delves into the past 2 decades of the Gambia and Senegal, the book presents a strong case to fight dictatorships throughout the world. Hadim Jah's works highlight the value of man in a resounding piece that explores how some African leaders have disconnected from social life, and thus, for him, their instinctive actions towards the citizenry merely leads to a dictatorial system.
In the book too, you can know the virtues of a perfect statesman and further perceive the danger of the global leadership.
The book is an academic crusade against dictatorial regimes in Africa, particularly the Gambia, which has suffered what the author describes as an agony of chains. Going by the novel, Babili Mansa instituted the worst dictatorship in Africa in 22 years of fist rule. And so Hadim's latest work sets to engage an inquiring mind in Gambians amid a new democracy strongly focused on development.
The Gambian people should be inquiring mind in this world of evolution, where many nations are rigorously focused on development. The Gambian population should be awakening in this 21st century, where knowledge can eradicate precariousness, but we cannot acquire any culture. Until Gambia is not completely free.
As he launched his maiden novel, Jah also called for reform in the African arts and literature since we are in the 21st century, which demands a vital reform process. To make arts and literature more responsive to African aspirations for democracy and sustainable.
And livestock herders is key to increase agricultural production.
So we want to sensitize our farmers, sensitize the rest of the
current world